Happy Diabetes Awareness Month. I am so thrilled to be here for the People of Color Living with Diabetes Summit. This is one of the just best, most uplifting conferences, and it is so wonderful to be able to share this topic with you. Today, we're going to be talking about redefining food joy and rebuilding a healthy relationship with food and diabetes. If we've never met before, my name is Mila Clarke. I am a nutritionist and a board-certified health and wellness coach. I work with people with diabetes in really making habit change accessible. So we walk into the doctor's office, we get our marching orders, and then what do we do next, right? Like, we don't always have a roadmap on how to move forward. And so my job is to help people understand the treatment plan that they've been given and how to incorporate that and implement that into their lifestyle so they're able to meet their health goals in the best and most comfortable way that works for them and the resources that they have. I myself also live with type 1 diabetes, or a latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, a slow progressing form of type 1. So this topic is something that I am so truly passionate about and something that I live every single day within my job and within living with this condition. So I hope by the end of this, you find something out about food joy and it helps you rethink how you approach eating and also the compassion that you have for yourself when things don't always go right. Just to let you know, I have no conflicts of interest, and here are the references I've used throughout my presentation. All right, so let me paint a picture for you. I am living with type 1 diabetes, and I post a photo of myself on Instagram enjoying a meal. I look happy, I look full, I look like a person present in the moment of food joy. And the internet didn't like that, because how dare I, me, a person living in a larger body, a person who has diabetes, how do I have the audacity to eat food and smile and look like I am enjoying it? And how dare I not look like I'm suffering or just sipping water in a dimly lit room and just not enjoying my food? And under a lot of those posts where I exhibit food joy, I receive comments like, "You should try not eating," or "You're the reason that diabetes exists," or "You clearly don't care about your health." And like, dramatic gasp, right? It's been my life on the internet for almost a decade now. And I've been called everything from irresponsible to a walking PSA for diabetes, or a diabetic influencer who glorifies food like it's a hobby, which is so fascinating and fun because food is literally my job as a health coach, as a nutritionist, and as a recipe developer. So of course I'm going to glorify food. Food is awesome. Food is great. And it's something that we should not be often looking at with a negative lens. So yes, I do glorify food like it's my hobby, because food is joy and it's culture and it's connection. And it's not something that I want people to feel shame over. And I don't ever want to feel that shame ever again. So the truth that I want to start with today with you all is that the world has a lot to say about what people with diabetes should look like, what we should eat, what we should act like, but we are not here to shrink for those people. We are here to expand, and what we are expanding is our joy, our voices, and sometimes our portion sizes, and that's okay. Some other commenter greatest hits: "You should probably stop eating carbs," or "Are you even trying to manage your diabetes?" Or "If you had just taken care of yourself and you weren't eating all of that, you wouldn't have diabetes in the first place." I can't tell you how many times I've read those exact words, not whispered behind my back, but typed publicly under a photo of my dinner or of my face or just my existence. For a very long time, I believed that I wasn't allowed to enjoy food, particularly after my diabetes diagnosis. And when I was hearing these external messages where the world was telling me I brought diabetes on myself, or when even well-meaning people just assumed that food was the enemy and that if I loved it, I must be doing something wrong. For a really long time, I let that shame sink in, and I let it tell me that food joy wasn't for people like me. And what I learned along the way, and what I'm going to share with you today, is that food joy is not a luxury. It's not something that some people get and some people don't. It's not something that you lose when you're diagnosed with diabetes. It is a radical act of self-love, and you deserve food joy. And how we can get better about reconnecting with our food and our roots to have a healthy relationship that then gets us the outcomes we want when we're living with diabetes. So, what is food joy exactly? Food joy means rediscovering the pleasure and peace in eating with diabetes. And it's not about perfection, it's about confidence, curiosity, and connection. And those are three things that we all have, right? Like, we can all build confidence. We all are curious. We always are asking questions about the world around us. And we're always connecting through the joys of being able to make food for each other or to eat together with our friends. So all of those things, that confidence, that curiosity, and that connection, those are accessible to us. In my work, I always tell people that I believe that food should empower and it shouldn't restrict us. When we understand how food makes us feel, we can enjoy every bite without that guilt or fear. And food joy transforms diabetes management into mindfulness. And it reminds us that caring for our blood sugar and loving the foods we eat can beautifully coexist. And they should coexist. You'll see here on the screen a reference to some of the comments that I talked about earlier. And these are actual things that strangers have said to me online for daring to enjoy my food or sharing a recipe that maybe they don't agree with as a way to manage diabetes. Something that all of these comments have in common, if you sit and read them, they are directly steeped in stigma. Stigma often turns food into a moral battlefield when it should not. When you live with diabetes, people will watch your plate like you're committing a crime, and every bite becomes a test. Every snack is a statement, and it's exhausting. Imagine being judged harder for the sandwich that you ate today than some politicians are for cutting Medicaid and increasing food insecurity in our communities. Oftentimes, there is this narrative of blame, and that blame is shifted onto people with diabetes. There's this idea that diabetes is something you caused, and that every time you eat, you're proving people right that you did this to yourself. And that mindset is incredibly incorrect, but it's also very harmful. And what's sad is that it is everywhere. We are still dealing with deep stigma when it comes to diabetes. And in my experience working with people, shame keeps people quiet. It makes them hide. And people with diabetes often underreport symptoms because they're afraid of being blamed. And that silence is deadly. If we keep telling people that struggling means that they're failing, we'll lose them before we ever have the chance to help them. And perfection doesn't exist. One of the other things that we deal with is the perfectionism on top of the stigma. We don't want to be judged, so we aim for perfection. We aim for the ability to show everyone that we are doing our best all the time and we are never doing anything wrong, and therefore we deserve no judgment. And perfection does not exist. So trying to achieve it ultimately leads to guilt, burnout, which is the exact cycle that keeps us from finding food joy. Another area that increases stigma is weight stigma. For those of us in larger bodies, the stigma doubles. Because suddenly, your diabetes is just because of your weight, and you're told to restrict instead of nourish. And it's ultimately unfair and extremely dangerous and can have huge effects and huge harmful effects on our self-esteem. Being in a larger body doesn't mean that you're non-compliant. Living in a larger body doesn't mean that you're non-compliant or that you're incompetent. But the system that we are working within isn't built to care compassionately for people in larger bodies. And that again drives the shame cycle and stigma. You cannot shame someone into better health. That's just not how it works. It's really important for us as patients to walk into these spaces with confidence and with the ability to say, I know my body, I know what it can do, and here's where I need help. It is the most empowering thing you can do to say, here is the goal that I want to achieve, and here's how I think I can get there. Can you? In the community, we have to fight stigma with education and visibility. Because when we up with joy, we change the narrative. And for all of the people who come behind us, They get to see that a life with food joy and diabetes is possible. And that is incredibly uplifting when you're walking into this diagnosis feeling ashamed, feeling hopeless, feeling scared. Now, normally I would do this live. We do a little Q&A, but since I'm recording, I still wanted to give you this experience, but it's not interactive today. If you ever see this in person some other time, you will see it as an interactive session. So I like to ask these questions, and I think that this tells us a whole lot about stigma and puts it into perspective what people are actually facing. So according to this study review that asked youth and adolescents if they have experienced diabetes stigma, what was the percentage of youth who said that they had? I won't make you wait. We'll get through these fast. But the correct answer is 98%. A staggering 98% of youth and adolescents with type 1 diabetes who were surveyed reported experiencing diabetes stigma. That is a huge number. That means that stigma is ever present. Stigma is always in the room with us. And youth, especially and adolescents, are feeling early in life already that pain of diabetes stigma. This question is always really interesting. This also comes from another study. So what underlying assumption do some public health campaigns rely on when they stigmatize heavier weight individuals? And the answer is that public health campaigns rely on stigmatizing weight because they believe that it promotes healthier behavior change. And that really couldn't be further from the truth. It does the opposite. Stigmatizing someone doesn't make them change their behavior. It makes them crawl further into themselves and not ask for help and not do anything about it. So it's very important that we understand how much of a bearing stigma has on behavior change, particularly for people living in larger bodies. So, which psychological effects were found to be related to weight stigma? And the correct answer is that it increases anxiety and body image dissatisfaction. This particular review found that associations between weight stigma also included a connection to anxiety, depression, and body image dissatisfaction. It's wild what we do to ourselves as a society by stigmatizing people for their body size. And it actually makes people feel worse and more anxious and more depressed, and they have higher body image dissatisfaction. Pretty eye-opening when you think about it. And our last question, which of the following is a documented clinical outcome linked to diabetes stigma in both T1D and T2D populations? The answer for that is a higher frequency of diabetes complications. This review linked diabetes stigma to higher rates of complications like diabetic ketoacidosis, severe hypoglycemia, and other chronic conditions associated with diabetes. So again, stigma is a stressor. It's something that needs to leave our community. We need to leave stigma behind. We need to correct stigma when it comes up. And ultimately, people have better outcomes overall. And this relates to how people enjoy food when they have diabetes or not. If you are feeling stigmatized, if you are feeling like you can't talk to anybody about the condition without being judged, you're not going to engage in change. You're not going to do anything differently because why? What's the point? If people are going to say things anyway, if it's going to result in worse outcomes, why take the time to do anything about it? And that's a valid and fair question, particularly when you're feeling the weight of stigma on top of the diagnosis of diabetes. One thing that I also find interesting is how the online space reveals how stigma isolates people with diabetes. In another study, people who posted in forums described profound feelings of being alone, even when they were surrounded by other people. Many had never met another person with diabetes in real life, and so online spaces became a lifeline. But they also became a place to process the emotional labor of diabetes that no one else sees. So people saying things like, I feel so alone, I can't talk to people because they don't understand and it hurts me. Or people with diabetes internalizing those myths that are shared online and offline. Myths like you cause diabetes by being fat, or you can cure it with weight loss, or never eat this food again and you'll cure diabetes. These comments from strangers, from faceless people, from people who are engaging in comment sections when you're talking about diabetes are so common that people with diabetes start to believe them and internalize them. And that leads to destructive behaviors, things like hopelessness and disordered eating, even in people who know what's comfortable for them and what works for them. You hear people say things like, it's an urban legend that weight is the deciding factor, but I still feel like I'm to blame. There's this idea that diabetes is something you caused, and every time you eat, you're proving people right. This mindset is extremely wrong, and it's harmful, and it's everywhere. Food joy is essential in diabetes management. It is not optional. When we think about food, we sometimes think about it in this very siloed approach, but it isn't just fuel. It isn't just something to eat to make sure that your body can function. Food, it has those practical applications, of course, but food is also culture and comfort and tradition, and stigma tries to steal that from people with diabetes. The truth is that we all deserve to enjoy food just as much as anyone else. The difference is that we just might have to approach it slightly differently. And it doesn't mean that things have to disappear or that we have to shun foods entirely. It just means that we have to make some changes to make the foods we eat work better for us. Food joy to me is resistance. It is healing. And every time we show up without shame, we make the world safer for someone else who will get that diabetes diagnosis. So now that we have named what tries to steal our food joy, I want to talk about how we take it back, because it can exist with diabetes, and I want to show you how. And so I'm going to introduce you to my acronym of food joy. So food joy is first, freedom from food guilt. Food is not a test. It is not a trap. It is fuel, and it can be joy. That invisible guilt that we sometimes feel isn't just about a food choice. It's about how the food makes us feel and what the result of eating that food looks like on our glucose charts. If you start to feel like there's this pressure to figure out what's going on, what foods are going to work for you, think about working with a dietitian who just gets it and who can help you reframe the things that you love to be able to make them work for diabetes management. Or maybe you sat down to eat a meal and you gave yourself permission to nourish without punishing yourself for it. Those are all ways of finding food joy. Finding the fuel in your food, but also finding the joy at the same time. It's also incredibly important to own your journey. You always get to write the rules, and you do not have to justify them to anybody except for your healthcare provider, because that's the only way that they can help you. They can't help you if they don't know what's going on. So always be as honest with your healthcare provider as you're comfortable with. So many people with diabetes have a long history of disordered relationships with control over food. Because this is your journey, you get to reclaim the version of diabetes management that works for you, where control doesn't mean restriction or suffering. If you feel like you need help, or you feel like maybe this isn't working the way that I want it to based on my data, you can always go back and work with a healthcare professional that's going to help you through it and really help you find out the cadence that's going to work for you. Then you need to overcome the self-stigma. One of my favorite things to say to people when they are being so hard on themselves is, don't talk to my friend like that. My friends get a kick out of it, when they're complaining about themselves, when they're like, I'm just not doing this right today, this is not going well. Those feelings are so incredibly valid, and sharing them and feeling them is what's going to help you move through them. But I just want to remind you, keep me in your head when you're having those moments of self-doubt. And just hear me say, don't talk to my friend that way. Don't talk to my diabestie that way. Your beliefs about yourself are what matter most in food. You don't have to believe the stigma and the shame that the world throws at you, particularly when you know that you are working your damned hardest and it's not true. One of my self-stigma beliefs was that I thought I should be able to with willpower. I should be able to not have a craving. I should be able to only eat salads so that my blood sugar management works for me. And now I know that diabetes is complex and that I needed support rather than shame, because the shame wasn't doing anything but keeping me in that cycle of not taking action and not taking those steps forward to better my blood sugars and to understand more about diabetes. So like punt self-stigma beliefs out of the door, get rid of them, believe in yourself and believe in what you can do, not what you can't do. Diabetes is not a weakness and it can define you, and that is not a bad thing. Diabetes doesn't mean we have to hide. It means we get to show up boldly, visibly, and joyfully with our devices and our snacks and our stories and our full selves. It is not a weakness at all. Diabetes defines so many different parts of our lives. When we're living with it, when we're a caregiver for a loved one with diabetes, it shows up everywhere, right? It shows up in our bank accounts, in our pockets, in our purses, in our pantries. It buzzes and it beeps and it breaks, and it just doesn't have an invitation but walks in the door anyway, and it leaves a mark. But we get to decide what that means for us and how it does define us. And for me personally, that's not as a weakness. It's not as something to be ashamed of. It's not a reason to shrink or disappear, but it really defines the strength and the resilience and the adaptability that it takes to live with this illness. And also what it takes to just learn about your body, particularly when it comes to how foods can impact you. Diabetes can define your commitment to caring about yourself, and it can be proof that you can navigate every single day with courage. Having diabetes never means that we have to hide. It means that we get to show up boldly, visibly, and joyfully with our devices, our snacks, our stories, and our full self. If anything, let diabetes define your ability to make informed and nuanced choices. Let it define your ability to advocate for others, to bust myths and stigmas, to teach others with grace and power what it actually looks like to be a functioning human being living with this illness. And you can also let it define your relationship with not as fear, but as fuel and as information. It can also be a connection to tradition, to pleasure, to comfort, and an act of self-love that can help you reshape those internal thoughts. We don't have to erase diabetes to enjoy our lives. We can include it, we can honor it, we can own it, and sometimes doing that helps us find more food joy. Just nourish is the J in food joy. You do not need to earn your next meal. You just need to honor your needs. So you don't need perfect blood sugars to deserve lunch. You don't need a full workout to justify dinner. You don't need to earn rest or food or care. You are human. You're human. And your needs are never too much. You don't have to do everything right to deserve to be cared for. And you really can honor so you can drop the good diabetic script, the clean eater script, the I can do it without breaking a sweat script. Honor your needs, because it means rewriting the story that centers your reality and not society's fantasy of every human being being the perfect optimal being. It is so important to let go of the story where you're supposed to suffer your way into worthiness and where you have to earn what you eat. You don't need to overhaul your entire approach. You just need to honor your needs, literally one step at a time. I think this is my favorite part of finding food joy. It's one step and then another. So start and then start again, and then 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 again. Healing a relationship with food may not happen in a straight line, but it always begins with starting and showing up. If something doesn't go the way that you want it to go, keep trying. Keep taking one step and then another. You might take 3 steps forward and stumble 1 step back, but that's okay. What's important is that you keep trying, you keep curiosity at the forefront, and ultimately, you don't give up. And lastly, and my favorite, is you are never alone. Isolation is one of our quietest symptoms, and there's relief, a lot of relief, in being seen and heard and understood. Sometimes you might feel like you're failing or like things aren't going exactly right, but you're not failing. You're human, and humans need support and not scolding. You don't ever have to do it alone if you don't want to. As a board-certified health and wellness coach, I know that I can be a supportive bridge when you feel overwhelmed or you feel unseen, and also help you make sense of the guidelines you've been given and why you've been given them so that you can reconnect with your body, your values, and your voice. And that helps you advocate for yourself. It helps you build confidence, and it helps you move forward with strength and clarity. Remember also that your healthcare provider wants to help. You're not alone in that. You might not get the answer that you like sitting in that chair, but that's okay. It's about digesting what you're being told, understanding where it fits for you, and then finding the resources that you have to move forward. You also have a community of besties in all areas of the world that understand exactly what you're going through. And so, if at all possible, find diabestie. I love my diabesties. They are the best. And on days where I'm having a really hard time, they are people that I know I can turn to and say, this day, and they'll say, I know, girl, keep going. Having people who can help validate the feelings that you're feeling and that also understand you can be such a big relief. And a lot of times we do this in isolation. We don't know somebody with diabetes. We don't have a community. And so we feel like we are isolated and we're paralyzed. We can't move forward. But finding that community and remembering that you are never alone, it can be such a salve when you feel like things aren't going the way that you want. So to end with you all, food joy isn't something you give up when you're diagnosed, and diabetes doesn't get to steal your joy. Just doesn't. You don't have to be fixed to be loved. So hopefully from this presentation today, you learned that food joy isn't something you give up when you're diagnosed. It can feel like you have to, but you truly don't. Diabetes doesn't get to steal your joy around food. It doesn't get to steal your cultural dishes. It doesn't get to say that like you're a Jamaican, that you don't get to eat plantains because they're going to spike your blood sugars. No, that's not the message anymore. The message is now that we are finding food joy as people with diabetes, and we are looking more at what we can add and what we can rebalance rather than what we have to take away from ourselves. And that is fundamental and critical to being able to find food joy, is to understand the foods that you eat, the patterns that you're experiencing, and then how to rework those foods so that you can still find the joy and the warmth and the love that comes with sharing a dish or sharing food with the people that you love. Your story, your body, your plate, it's all still yours. And I hope you remember that diabetes and food joy can and should coexist. If you have any questions after this presentation or you want to find me, you can look me up. I am the Hangry Woman all over social media. You can also find me at Glucose Guide app. That is our app for food joy, community, coaching, cooking, confidence. It is an awesome place to be. And so I hope that if you are looking for food joy, or if you are a provider working with somebody who is needing to find that self-compassion and food joy, I'm here for you, and I am so glad to be a part of this community. I just want to give a big shout out to Casey, Grace, and Effie for putting together this conference and allowing me to speak on this topic that I am so passionate about. I am so grateful for their leadership and for what they do to make sure that diverse voices are represented in this community. Big thank you to all of you for watching, and I hope that you take away some ways to reclaim your food joy and find some joy overall in your diabetes management. Thanks so much.